baby.
We're going at it at 110%.
I just want 5 minutes of happiness, please. Just give me 5 minutes.
And they did it! They did it!
Left, feet left.
What the hell was that? Oh, yeah!
What the fuck are you talking about?
What's up, my fam? We are back. Another episode of our Athlete Spotlight. A little special one here Friday morning. Getting your coffee going today. You know, don't matter if you're East Coast, West Coast, whatever. We're joined for this episode by our returning guest, as always, our good friend down the bottom there, Mr. Adam Carriker. Adam, how you feeling today?
I'm good. How are you?
We're good. How about you, man? You know, you've been having some medical things over the past few months. How you feeling now? You bouncing back good?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I'm on some heart medications that I'm ready to be off of. The beta blockers tend to make you tired, so I've had enough of that. I can't take my pre-workout, so that drives me nuts.
Oh man!
And then I'm staring down the barrel. So I have a cardiac MRI next week, and then I have a follow-up second opinion appointment 2 days later, because I'm probably going to need a second procedure, but we'll see how all that turns out.
Definitely, you got us in your thoughts and prayers, but we're gonna have some fun here today, like we always do. We're to talk a little football, mix a little things up as always. Our athlete spotlights are brought to you by specialized physicaltherapy.com. And our poll question today, I want to get your thoughts. I know you're big on the Nebraska guys and things of that nature. We're right around the corner from the draft. I want to get your thoughts on. Do you feel like Nebraska will have 6 players drafted by the end of draft weekend?
6. That would be great. It would be a little surprising if they had 6. We had, I forget, it was like a 40 or 50 year streak of always having a player drafted, and that was snapped here a couple of years ago. And then I could be wrong. We may have went 2 without a player drafted. I could be wrong without that. About that. 6 would be phenomenal. Obviously, I'm rooting for 6. I'm rooting for even more. You look at guys like Cam Taylor-Britt. You look at some of the other guys that are coming out. They definitely have NFL potential, ability. A guy like Damian Daniels, who left early, might fly under the radar just a smidge, but maybe he gets popped and gets drafted at some point. So that'd be great. 6 does seem like a lot based on the projections that you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm aiming a little high a little bit there. Looking at some of the stuff that I was seeing. Do you feel like any Nebraska Cornhuskers is going to wind up here in Philadelphia? Maybe a wide receiver, maybe an edge rusher. What are you feeling?
Well, we're trying to find an edge rusher at Nebraska, so we're still working on that ourselves. In fact, I think they all came back, so I don't know about any edge rushers this year coming out of Nebraska. Wide receiver-wise, most of them are back this year. Again, we're trying to find those guys in our own right at those same positions. So that's something I think we're still working on there in our own right. So as far as the draft, I like I mentioned, the secondary, Damian's a D lineman, a 3-4 D lineman, interior D lineman, and a 4-3, so to speak. So along those lines, I think is where some guys might get drafted. Oh, our center, Cam Jurgens, as well. So there's 3 guys who definitely have a chance of getting popped in the draft.
Yeah, I think center is going to be a topic here in Philadelphia. Obviously, with Jason Kelce coming back, promised us another year. Wanted to make sure he's still at that elite level where he wants to be. With the amount of picks that we have, and I feel like our front office is looking not only to improve the team but potentially looking for that mid to late round replacement for Jason Kelce.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cam Jurgens he's a second-rated center coming into the draft right out behind the guy from Iowa. The guy from Iowa is probably going to go first round. I think Cam's probably projected second round. So if they're looking for a second-round guy, he'd probably be there. After that, he may not be there.
Yeah, we don't know what we're doing with this draft. I mean, obviously, the Eagles are in a weird flux state right now. You don't know if they're going to be completely all in building around Jalen Hurts. You obviously know they need to do some things on defense. on top of, improving some things on offense. I actually think outside of the center that I think, the Eagles probably have one of the youngest, best, well-rounded offensive lines in the NFL. But, obviously it's going to be interesting to see, already made some trades, already made some upgrades. It's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next few days with draft day.
Yeah, this has been one of the more interesting NFL off seasons in history, in period.
Yeah,
and
you've seen a lot of big names moves. I mean, it's crazy.
We haven't even hit the draft, and that's usually when things start to peak and get really interesting. So, you're hearing about all these potential trades and teams possibly moving up, trying to get certain guys in the draft. So we'll see what happens. This has definitely been a fun off season to watch.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like compared to most years, you don't normally see this many names move, from place to place to place as we've seen this offseason. And not just that, with guys who retire, then not retire, and then we're seeing a lot of that going on right now. I think there's a lot more buzz this offseason around the NFL than there has been in years past, and that's crazy considering the NFL is arguably the sport when it comes to sports here in North America.
Yeah, they're definitely making the most money, that's for sure, and they keep increasing the revenue that they're making every year. Yeah, it's funny. You might have been alluding to not just Tom Brady, but obviously Tom Brady retiring. When he retired, I was like, this is the guy most people consider to be the greatest of all time. I don't feel like many people are making a big enough deal out of this. And in the back of my mind, I think it was because everyone was kind of expecting the same thing. Everyone was realistically expecting him to come back at some point. Nobody really believed it. I don't think anybody saw the Noah's Ark 40 days return, but that is what we ended up getting.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's one of those things. What in my opinion, what happened with him is he was having thoughts in his mind, about his team, front office, etc. But he also got to the point where I think everyone was just asking him about it, and he just wanted to give everyone an answer. Yeah, I'm done. And then a few weeks later, it was just he's home sitting there, just like there's nothing to do. I'm not getting ready for this. You know what? I'm not done. I'm not. I got something else left in me. Let's see what we can do. What we can run back this year. And he went change his mind. And we'll have arguments about whether Brady's the GOAT, whether Montana's the GOAT. I think everyone kind of has their own quarterback, regardless if you feel it's Tom, it's Tom. I think I know a lot of people harp on some of the other things surrounding Tom. That's why they won't give him that moniker. It's one of these things where he's probably one of those guys that if you're a free agent and things of that nature, that's the guy you want to go and play for, because he's gonna give you 120%, Monday through Sunday. That's just who Tom Brady is. So it's going to be interesting to see how the season plays out. The Rams won last year. You had the Cincinnati Bengals was kind of the Cinderella team. Are they able to kind of sustain that and continue to win this year? Is going to be the thing for that. This is going to be a fun year for the NFL in general.
Yeah, I feel like the Rams are just getting better. I feel like the Bengals, I mean, my God, if they could learn to block air, they'd be even better. And they've made some upgrades on their O-line already. The skill position talent they have, Burrow and the running back and the receivers, I mean, they couldn't block nothing last. How do you win a playoff game and give up 9 sacks? That's unbelievable to me. So if they can block anybody, they're going to be significant.
We know a little something about winning games with no one blocking for our quarterback. Anybody who remembers the early ages of Andy Reid and Donovan McNabb knows that all too well. Donnie went through that. It's not easy. I think the Bengals will be better. Will be better next year. I don't know if they can make it back to the Super Bowl, but like you said, if they're able to kind of put some things together with the team that they've built over the last few years, they're going to be a fun team to watch over the next handful of years.
Well, here was the other thing that was interesting, because you look at their defense, there's not really a big name guy or a household name guy on that defense. But if you break it down a little bit more through trades, through the draft, through trading for draft picks, 9 of the 11 guys on their defense were drafted in the top 3 rounds. So like 90% of their defense is top 3 round draft picks, which is unheard of. So they may not have the big money guy, the big name guy, the big standout guy, but there's no holes. Like there's no, because normally you'll have like a great pass rusher, but the secondary is not great, or a great run stopper, but you lack the pass rusher. Like they don't have holes anywhere. So it's hard to figure out where to attack them. With the Brady thing, it's interesting with Spygate and Deflategate and everything else. I think because Deflategate, I believe, went straight into the Super Bowl where they played the Falcons. I could be wrong. But then he goes out and they win the Super Bowl, and clearly the balls were of proper inflation. I will say this. I was a quarterback growing up, and people were like, did he know how inflated the balls were? Yeah, trust me. My daughter is a 10-year-old pitcher in softball. She knows whether she likes the ball she's pitching or not. This isn't even an NFL quarterback who's fighting, for his legacy. He absolutely knew. So I get why people hold those things against him. I think what may have put him over the top, because even before he went to Tampa, he had 6 rings.
Yeah, I think when you did what you did in the AFC, and then you come back and do what you did with Tampa last year, like, listen, I was one of the ones holding on to him because I remember watching Joe. And Joe would get absolutely brutalized on a consistent basis, but he found ways to continue to keep that Niner team in the 80s, and what Young later did with the end of the Montana teams in the late 90s. I mean, it's one of those things where you could put that level up there, but as much as I don't care for Tom, you have to give him that nod and respect, what he's done over there in New England and what he did over the last few years there in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying. So he had, like, nobody has as many rings as he does in football. He's got 33% more rings than the second place individuals, Joe and a Bradshaw. And then you start to look at other sports. I don't want to say it's easier to win a ring in basketball, but one player has more influence over the outcome of the game. And so I could say it's harder in football because you only influence so much in football, not near as much as basketball. And football. And Michael Jordan is heralded for having 6, as he should be. And then Brady has the same amount of rings and a much harder sport to win it in. For me, it was still a little bit of a debate because of Spygate, Deflategate, all that stuff. But then he goes down to Tampa, and in the first year, he wins a Super Bowl. And the Patriots I don't even think they made the playoffs. To me, I think that was kind of swung it in his favor. So,
and not just that, it's the fact that he was able to take less money each year. He was able to take those restructures because he didn't want the money or need the money at the time. He wanted to win championships. So he tried to help the team out each and every year, whether it was on the Patriots or the Bucks, to help them sign players and recruit them over. And just like you said, the first year that he goes down, they win it. And I think the toughest test that he had in that whole playoffs was Washington because of the defense. It's always something when you have a very good defense and then they smother around him that he struggles against it. And he just was so focused that year winning the Super Bowl. And I think he was prone to win it because he wanted to prove the doubters that he could win without, of course, Bill Belichick.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's interesting to beat Tom Brady, which not a lot of people have done. You watch the Giants are the only team that's really had any sort of success, 2-0 in the Super Bowls. And the formula is kind of twofold. Number one, get pressure on him with your front 4. Don't try to get pressure on him by blitzing because he'll eat you alive. He will legit surgeon you right down the field, surgically dissect you. But if you can get pressure with your front 4 without having to blitz, like the Giants did it twice, and that was the difference. And then, Eli's obviously probably a Hall of Fame quarterback, but he was clutch. You need someone else on the other end holding that ball.
I was having a conversation about the Mannings.
It's going to be hard to beat him.
Yeah, I was having a conversation about the Mannings the other day, and someone kind of felt like Eli was better. I'm like, I think it's weird when we talk about them too. Like I think Peyton was the better overall quarterback, but Eli was just so clutch, and like no matter how much you hit him, smacked him around, whatever, he would still bite down and throw down the barrel of the gun, so to speak. And that's something I don't think Peyton really mastered over the years. But yeah, those two guys, those three quarterbacks are probably marked pretty well over the last decade or so.
So let me be very, very clear. Peyton Manning is one of the greatest of all time. What he has done has surpassed anything I've done by 1,000%, and I'm proud of what I've done. That being said, like you go back to college, like it was Tennessee, Florida back in the day, if you remember in the 90s.
Yep.
He never once beat Florida. Never beat Florida. Never won the big one in the bowl game or a national championship. May have gotten smacked by Nebraska 42-17 in 97. I don't know. May or may not recall that. And even he won one SEC championship, but he beat an unranked Auburn team by 1 point, 30-29. So it was always kind of he's the greatest regular season quarterback of all time. And then he goes to the pros and you kind of see some of the same things. Now, obviously, he won a Super Bowl with the Colts, and he was an integral part of that. Like they do not win that Super Bowl without him. You could argue, and he even made jokes about it on SNL afterwards, that the Broncos carried him to the last Super Bowl because he was clearly done physically.
Yeah,
he's obviously one of the greatest of all time, but I think you're right. Eli gets put in that conversation because in the big moments, in the clutch moments, he showed up maybe a little bit better. But if you kind of went through the rest of the games and the rest of the regular season, I think Peyton had the advantage. But it's those big games, those big moments, that's what people remember. And obviously, Peyton's unequivocally one of the best ever. We're like splitting hairs here and having fun. But I think that's how people see those two.
Yeah, and then the one year that he won it with the Colts was the year that Bob Sanders was able to stay healthy and actually play and help the team throughout the playoffs. That was the one thing that they were kind of missing, was that leader on the defense, because Peyton kind of always had to play from behind with that defense not playing as well. But once Bob Sanders was able to stay on the field, that defense played so different because they had that leader on there, and they were able to come back in that game against the Patriots. I think that's what made it even better for Peyton that year, was they were able to get through the Patriots down by 21 at half. They come in, they get the win, and then they beat Chicago in the Super Bowl.
I remember watching that AFC Championship game. I thought it was over. I was like, oh, here we go again. Patriots beat them again. And before you know it, they're coming back. And that defense, they had some good players with Freeney and Mathis at end. But you're right, Bob Sanders, he's a guy that does not get talked about enough. And I do think a little bit of that is due to the fact that he would get banged up from time to time. You're right. He was an absolute difference maker on that defense.
Yeah, and it's funny, we're talking about difference makers. It looks like Earl Thomas looks like he wants to pull himself out of retirement. I've just seen some reports. Schefter was reporting, he's 33. He's putting it out there that he's healthy and he wants to get back in the game. Where do you find a guy like that landing?
I'm not going to lie to you. The first thing I thought of is he wants to go play in Tampa. He wants to go play with Tom. I don't know that. That's like the first thing that entered my mind. I remember when it was years ago, like Calvin Johnson retired. And then like 2 years later, there was some brief talks about him coming back. And there was even some connection to him and the Patriots at the time. Belichick and Brady were there, but it never came to fruition. Yeah. But I've always been like, what if a guy just retired and then you just kind of pick the team you wanted to go to? Because essentially you're kind of like a free agent at that point.
Yeah. If nobody's ever officially retired, I think you have to be at least like 6 months in. I think it's not something you can just retire and then you just pop back out. Because
this year Eric Weddle, technically he said I was done playing, and then the Rams asked him to come back, and he was like, if you guys make the playoffs, give me a call and we'll see where I'm at. And he kept himself in good shape. It just so happens when the playoffs came by, they lost both of their safeties. They give him the call, and then it goes in there and plays like he never missed a beat, and then had a good playoff run.
If anyone watched the film of that, I think he found them. He got lucky in some of those situations, even luckier in the Super Bowl, because I don't think if people remember quite. He got himself banged up in that game too.
Yeah. Well, if you look at who's playing next to him, you can make a little bit of mistakes with the guys that he has in that secondary.
Either way, I
And
mean, it was a cool story to watch. Watching what Whitell come back. He's one of the again one of the more memorable guys over the last decade or so. So it's definitely fun to watch that. I just find it intriguing that Thomas wants to come back. You still have Tyrann Mathieu still out there. I think these guys might sign after the draft. And we'll see. We'll see someone who loaded up and still have some money to play with. Pick up one of these guys and see about making a run. I think the Saints, the Chiefs are going to be in on both of these guys. I think the Eagles will be in on them. I don't know about Thomas, but I know, obviously Eagles have already shown interest in Mathieu. I've already said, we've talked about it here a few weeks ago. It's one of the things I think they need to get a safety here in Philadelphia. So this offseason wasn't a little bit of a letdown. Obviously, they've done some good things this offseason, but it should be fun. See where they land.
Yeah, I was going to say, what about the Eagles for Thomas? That was another one.
Listen, we need a safety. Like nothing against Anthony Harris and some of the kids we got here, but you still need a veteran leader guy on the back end of your defense. It's always been like that. We've had one here for the longest time. Brian Dawkins was here forever. We had Jenkins here for a while. McLeod took that role kind of over the last few years. So and I don't think we're like super weak back there, but yeah, I want a veteran. If it's Thomas, if it's Mathieu, I actually think this Eagles team could go and potentially shock some people again and go make another run. That kind of boils down to what Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts are going to do on offense. But I like the direction the defense has already moved in. They filled some holes at linebacker. They did get a edge. I still feel we'll see in early in the draft what the Eagles' plans are. If it's really going after trying to make a run this year and see what you can do with a guy like Jalen Hurts. But we'll see. It's going to be fun, man.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's interesting going back to Eric Weddle. It was talked about, but I don't think it was talked about enough. And frankly, it wouldn't surprise me. 20 years later, they finally made the movie about Kurt Warner. At some point, I think people appreciate what Weddle did. First of all, he came out the same year I did. We were at the Senior Bowl together. He came out of Utah. First of all, he's an undersized guy to begin with. And so it's easy to overlook him. Now, obviously, multi-time Pro Bowler, now a Super Bowl champ, been in the playoffs a million times. He proved people what he could do, but taking 2 years off. So when you get the season ends, you got the off season, you got the OTAs, you got minicamp and everything. I don't think people understand how different players look at the beginning of training camp versus 5 weeks later at the end. The players look completely different because you're in football shape, you're ready to go, yada, 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 which is why you go through all that. He had 2 years. And they basically just said, are you still in shape? And he had obviously played for them before. He was familiar with the scheme and the coaches, but to be out 2 years. And let's say had he come back week one and just started week one or been thrown in week one, that would have been mind-blowing enough to me. But then he just comes back. They call him on a Tuesday. He's in on a Wednesday, and he's got the physical, and he's practicing, and then he's playing in a freaking playoff game that weekend. To me, it's so understated how absurdly hard that is. As a guy myself who was out for a couple years, and then I would go work out for teams, I was like, oh, my God, I feel incredibly rusty right now, and I wasn't hitting anybody. I wasn't in pads. I was just doing football drills again. And he's thrown into not just a key role. He's not just thrown into 2 years off and are you still in shape? You're definitely not in football shape because you can't be, but he's thrown into the middle of the freaking playoffs in a Super Bowl run. And to me, it was I'm a big fan of his, and I know him a little bit to begin with, so that helps, but it was so understated what he did. And obviously there were some times I felt like some receivers were open in the Rams secondary, but when you got Von Miller and Aaron Donald, you can get away with some mistakes and they're understandable.
Oh, that's what I was saying. I felt that like what
movie
Brian was talking, that they put themselves in some bad spots. But yeah, when you got guys like that up front, when you got 99, when you got AD and you got Von Miller, who absolutely go and get after the quarterback, you can get yourself out of position and not get burnt or pay for it. Well, and it's going to be interesting to see what they can do this year. You know, coming back, can they run it back again?
I think it's blowing what he actually did. Like it really is not a year off; it's 2 years off. So that was shocking to me.
If you want to go way back with how far like you guys were in college, he was a recruit of course, Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer was the coach at Utah when he got recruited there. I think he was there for only 1 or 2 years with Weddle before Whittingham took over, and then Meyer went to Florida. So that tells you how long ago it was, because Urban Meyer, after that, coached Florida, won 2 championships, went to Ohio State, won there, and then, of course, had this bad year in Jacksonville this past season. So that tells you how long ago it was that he's been in the league. It's been that long.
Yeah, bad years, putting it kindly. But to your, I'm 38. Like him and I are the same age, and adds to it. Like this is a near 40-year-old who's undersized, who's been out for 2 years, being thrown into this crazy scenario, and he performed more than admirably. To me, they got to make a movie about this at some point. Hopefully, it doesn't take 20 years.
Yeah, because I wholeheartedly agree with you, Adam, that they waited too long to do that for Kurt. That dude, that should have been like 5 years after the fact, that at the max, but 20 years later. But God, Daniel, I didn't mean to cut you off. God.
No. Do you think it was easier that he waited until the playoffs to play, or do you think it made it harder for him? Do you think it would have been better for him to play the whole season, or because of his age, just doing the playoffs was something that would have worked better for him?
Oh no, doing the season would help. He's a vet guy. They obviously try to respect him, or they don't make that phone call to begin with.
Yeah,
you can protect the guy throughout the season. Obviously, there's always a chance of getting banged up and hurt, but being thrown into the middle of a high intense situation like that against, I mean, you're not just playing against an NFL team. You're playing against the best because you're in the playoffs. It absolutely would have helped. Otherwise, what the heck are we doing training camps for every year? You know, so it absolutely would have helped.
I think it's crazy that the past 2 years, the team that has hosted the Super Bowl has won it. We've been talking about this so long, how it would be nice if the team to host it would actually win it. And we've had back-to-back years of that happening with Tampa and then Los Angeles now. It seems like it's becoming a thing now.
So I actually looked it up at one point. It had been since Miami hosted it, I want to say 70s. Like 40 or 50 years since that had happened. And now it's happened 2 years in a row. And I saw, you probably saw it, the NFL memes on Facebook and Twitter put it out. This is a serious problem that the NFL is going to address. So in order to avoid and make sure that the stadium that the Super Bowl's played in next year, that the home team does not play, they're just going to make sure the Super Bowl's hosted in Dallas next year.
I got 2 more before I'm done, and we'll get ready to wrap this one up. Jalen Hurts had a breakout year last year. Kept himself the starting job. Looks like that the Eagles are gonna kind of push back and let him run it back and give him another year, see if he can develop and kind of take that elite quarterback role. Watching what you've seen, being a defensive end, you feel like he has those attributes that he can develop and get that deep ball that I think some of these Eagles fans are clamoring for, or do you feel like he's kind of at where he's at, and he's going to be this guy who really thrives on when the play breaks down, being able to hurt team with yardage and finding some of these guys underneath? Is that who he's going to be, or can he get to that elite quarterback level?
So I'll go back to Alabama to kind of answer that question. His freshman year, he started, and they played Clemson in the national title game. He was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year. All right, the next season, he gets benched at halftime of the national title game. We all know the story. And Tua comes in. My God, a true freshman who hasn't played much all year, halftime of the national title game. Another story that's kind of mind-blowing. And it was the right decision and the decision that helped the game, or they lose that game to Georgia. And the difference was he was struggling, Jalen, so bad to throw the ball. Like he looked awful. As big of a risk as it was the right call, obviously, by saying that hindsight is more than 20/20 in this picture. But you fast forward to the next year, the SEC championship game. They're playing Georgia. Georgia's outplaying them, really kicking their butt. Tua's the quarterback. Tua doesn't get benched, but he gets nicked up, and they have to take him out. In comes Jalen. I'm like, oh, it's over. He's going to play like he did before, and it's a wrap. All of a sudden, he starts throwing the ball, and he starts completing passes, and he's got accuracy, and he's using his legs. And he's using his legs not just to run like he once was. He's using it to buy time to get find open receivers. And I was like, holy crap, he has improved a lot in a year. Then obviously he goes to Oklahoma. He learns under Lincoln Riley, Heisman Trophy finalist, all that good stuff. Now he's with the Eagles. 95% of the time, 19 times out of 20, I have not, this is not going to thrill Eagles fans, but let me finish. I have not seen a scrambling quarterback learn how to throw from the pocket well enough that they could survive long term. Michael Vick, kind of, but he still really thrived on his legs. The only guy I can really think of that did something similar was Michael Jordan. He was a high flyer. He was a dunker. And then as he got older, he couldn't do all that stuff the same. And then he developed the most lethal fadeaway you've ever seen. He's one of the few guys that could actually do something like that. When I watch Jalen, he's not there yet, not on an NFL level. Obviously, he proved he can do it in college. I do think the improvement he showed from being benched to leading Alabama back to that win after halftime of the SEC title game when Tua got knocked out showed he's capable of making that improvement. Doing what he did under Lincoln Riley, who's obviously a great quarterbacks coach and offensive mind, has shown that he's one of the few guys that's kind of capable, because every once in a while, there's a guy out there that breaks the mold. The potential, the ability is there. Most of the time I watch guys like that, and I'm like, I just don't see it. Not that they can't do it, but I just don't see it happening. I don't know that he will, but I absolutely am curious to watch him, where with some guys I'm not even curious to watch, to see if he can do it at an NFL level, because he's shown he can do it before.
Well, no, and he has shown flashes like as much as I think this fan base is hard on, parts of this fan base is hard on him. He has thrown you needles that like he's thrown guys open, trust them to turn around and make the play at the right time. And he's also done, taking opportunities like that, what we've seen in the playoff, try to throw guys open, hope that they make the right decision and it burns them. So we've seen kind of both sides of it. And I'm with you. I'm interested to see what happens this year. If after 6 games, if I've still seen the same stuff that I was seeing, at the early parts of last season, then yeah, I'll probably be sitting there saying, okay, well, let's start counting our chickens for next year, and who's the quarterbacks coming up in next year's draft. That'll probably be my attitude at that point in time. But we still have to see that. One more, obviously, again, the quarterback position is something that's going to be a lot talked about in the NFC East divisional talks. Carson Wentz was traded to your former team there, which is now the Washington Commanders. Do you feel like the Colts gave up on him? It's a bad situation, and this guy might be able to haunt our Eagles the next few years, or is he buying time before the league kind of figures him out all the way, and we're going to see him on the unemployment line in a few years?
Well, I mean, you guys know as well as anybody, you guys drafted him, the talent, the potential, the ability is there. You guys won the Super Bowl when Foles stepped in. I mean, Wentz was having an MVP type season that year. The issue is, I'm preaching to the choir, but as you know, he gets banged up, he gets beat up, and then he doesn't come back and play the same. He's never played the same since that MVP type year and the injury. He's never looked the same.
He had a flash during like the middle part of last year where you were starting to see him put it together, and then it fell apart again.
But and I've seen it before. Guys get hurt, and sometimes they don't end up being the same. And some of the people, when I mention this name, may or may not recognize it. DeMornay Pearsonell, as a true freshman at Nebraska, was the best returner in the country. He got hurt the next year, and he was never the same as a sophomore, junior, senior. Even though he was healthy, he just wasn't the same. He's had the same ability. I see a little bit of that in Carson, in that you'll see the flashes, you'll see the potential, the physical. He's not old enough for Father Time to have caught up to him just yet, but I can't help but wonder if some of it's connected to the injury, to the mental. And like you said, at times with the Colts, of course, they could always just turn around and hand the ball to the back and they were going to be fine. So it wasn't all on him. With the Redskins, there's going to be a lot more that's put on him, a lot more. There has to be a lot more expected of him. They've got some good skilled players with Scary Terry, and the running back's pretty good, but they don't just have that workhorse like you do in Jonathan with the Colts. So for me, I would like to say yes, but when the guy that had success with you in Philadelphia brings you to Indianapolis, and then a year later you're out the door, not saying it can't be done, because this can go one of two ways. It can go either that guy in Indianapolis was right and he's out of DC in a year, or Carson can become uber motivated, which happens sometimes, and maybe he blows up for a year or two. The question is, can he be consistent with it?
Do you think it has anything to do with the mobility issues after the injury? Usually how he was used was they would roll him out the first couple of years, and then he had so much success moving to the outside. Now it feels like ever since the injury, it kind of just stays in the pocket, and then that's where you've seen all those sacks and fumbles and turnovers that he's had, because he's holding on to the ball too much inside the pocket, and it's causing him to make mistakes.
That's kind of what I was alluding to with the mental thing. Like, he's probably – it's not where his strong suit is in the pocket. But ever since the injury, he hasn't been the same outside the pocket, probably with decision-making, like you said, holding on to the ball too long. And maybe physically he's not comfortable, but his strong suit is not just being a pocket quarterback, because he's a big, strong kid with decent speed and good mobility, especially for his size. And he's kind of taken that aspect of it away. It's almost like if you're a baseball leadoff hitter and you've got great speed, that's part of your hitting and your batting average. When all of a sudden that's gone, now you just have to be a great hitter, and that's not who you truly were. And it's hard to do that later on. And it's not that Carson's an old guy, but now he's having to change his game to something he's never really done, and he's lost an element that was a key part of his game. And I think that's been a challenge for him.
I agree with that one. I like Greg's comment here too.
Yeah, I also think that it doesn't help that his extension kicks in to where he's going to be making $36 million. And when a team is questioning their quarterback, they don't want to have to pay that full amount if they have reservations on them. So that they were thinking about, let's go another way. Of course, the GM came out and said what he said. And then according to reports, Frank Reich came out and said that he thought he made a mistake. And then next thing you know, he gets traded out, and then they bring in Matt Ryan. So, of course, I think it had something to do with that contract as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. As a former player, like the amount of money, let's just be honest, the amount of money you're being paid speaks to how good you are, and that's how players feel about it. Like, that's the correlation in our minds. I know for a fact I felt that way. Other guys felt that way. So you want – a lot of times, obviously, everybody wants as much money as they can make. But to me, yeah, the money was great, but it was more about what the money said. And I know a lot of people feel that way, but here's the other end of it. It also makes you, unless it's guaranteed, which this ain't baseball, basketball, and not many people are Deshaun Watson. Unless it's guaranteed, it actually makes you expendable if people start to question things down the road. So I've always wondered if guys should take a little less money, which doesn't say, your level of play is maybe where you want it to say it is. And maybe you're not making as much money, but maybe it's a little bit more job security as well. Especially if they bring in somebody who has no tie to you, a new GM, the owner sells the team, because these things happen. To me, I've always kind of thought, it does make you more expendable the more money you have with the less guarantee of that money anyways.
Yeah, because if you take less and then you shave it down a little bit, say, like just like you said, a new guy comes in, new GM, new coach, they'll be like, oh, this is more of a friendly contract. So I'll kind of simmer down the expectations of the guy, and then he can come in without all that pressure. Because, like you said, all that money brings in massive pressure to perform. And when you don't perform, they're going to want to look elsewhere to get their money's worth.
Yep. I agree.
All right, Daniel, is that all you got, brother?
The only other thing I have to say is I've noticed I watched a couple of things on YouTube was your new YouTube show, the Carricker Chronicles, and I was so enamored by it because it just enthused the enthusiasm about talking about your Nebraska Cornhuskers. What came about of that? What made you want to start the YouTube channel?
Oh man, I'll try to condense a longer story into a shorter version. I've never had aspirations of speaking publicly for a living. I've never liked, no offense, I've never liked the media or guys in the media. Like, this was so far off my radar. It was mind blowing. I also never knew what I wanted to do growing up. Like, career day, I'd play sports. The teacher would make me write something else. I don't even know what it is. I get to Nebraska and they're like, what's your major going to be? I'm like, I have no idea. They're like, cool, do general studies for 2 years. You have to declare year 3. Year 3 comes around. I'm like, what am I going to, they're like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I have no idea. Call my dad. He's like, no clue. I'm like, no clue. He's like, where the money is, that's business. So I have a business degree just because that's where the money is. And actually, if you turn out to be a pro athlete, you are your own brand. And it turned out really well. But at the time, I was just like, I got no clue. He's like, all right, well, at least go where the money is. At least that'll help you there. So really had no idea what I was going to do whenever I stopped playing. So Bo Pelini gets fired, I think 2014. I could be a little off on that. And it's like everybody has a gigantic opinion on it in the state of Nebraska. And the only people that I saw talking publicly about it that were former players were kind of his former players and guys that were good dudes, but I could not have disagreed with their opinion anymore. Just didn't agree at all. And so I just sat down one day. I took about 40. I don't know. I just started typing. I thought it was going to be 5 minutes. And like 45 minutes later, I didn't use paragraphs. I didn't spell check. I didn't do nothing. I just sat down and typed. And it was this big, long blurb is what it was. There were spelling errors. There was no paragraphs. And I just hit send. And I didn't expect much. I just vented, basically. All of a sudden, I started getting texts. And people are hitting me up. And like this thing blew up. And then the Omaha World Herald is like, can we run this? And I was like, sure, whatever. Sounds good. And so I'm like, all right, that's great. You know, so like a week later, they hire Mike Riley. Well, nobody knows who Mike Riley is in the state of Nebraska. He coached at Oregon State. My high school football team's camp was at Oregon State every year growing up. So I was very familiar with Riley, Corvallis, all that. So I sat down and I wrote another thing. I tried to use paragraphs and I spell checked it at least once, but then I hit send. And it did very well. And I was like, and I was right around that time where I wasn't sure how much longer I was going to be able to play. I had the injuries, so on and so forth. And so the next fall, I was like, you know what? Once a week after the games on Sunday, I'm just going to type up an article, like my thoughts on the game, just like a beta test. See if people were just hot on that topic or do they give a crap what I think. And the articles did very well, if you want to call them an article. I just put them on Facebook. And they did very well. And so I get a call at the end of that football season by David Max. He runs Husker Max. And he goes, for every $1 you can make writing an article, you can make 6 doing a video. And I was like, whoa, crap. That makes a lot more monetary sense. And if you ever have nothing to do with your time, you're absolutely bored, Google Fourth and Pain. I actually had a show with the Commanders. It's still weird for me to say. The Commanders. And it was half pro wrestling, half football. And it's myself and Chuck Carroll. We're like Mutt and Jeff. I mean, we're very, very good. I look at it now like, oh, God, the background was horrible. Everything was horrible. And I didn't even want to do that show, but it was the year of the lockout. And I got so bored in the off season, and it was just going to be audio. And then he eventually convinced me to do a podcast because I'm terrified of public speaking, or I was. I hated public speaking. I would be dripping wet with sweat anytime I had to do a post-game press conference. And then the media would misquote me, so I really didn't like that. So this was nowhere on my radar. So I fast forward, I start doing the shows, and they're doing pretty good. And then the Omaha World Herald calls me again. They're like, do you want to work for us? I'm like, sure. What are we talking money-wise? It was a better offer. And so I've kind of just been with them since. So it really stemmed from I don't like public speaking. I don't enjoy chatting with certain folks. I don't agree with what these former players are saying, and I'm just going to vent, get it out of the way. And it just kind of stemmed from there and what I discovered. First of all, there's a lot of good folks in the media. It's just the ones who were dying for that clickbait. Other folks a bad rap, which is unfair. There are a lot of good folks in the media. But what I discovered is if I'm the one doing the talking, it's my narrative. It's my story. If I screw it up, that's on me, not anybody else. I also realized, hey, I don't suck at talking. I actually enjoy it. And people seem to kind of be interested. And I don't know, once I get going, like I try to stay calmer with the heart. Around my house right now, I'm very mellow, very mundane, mostly because the medication makes me kind of drowsy a lot, which I'm totally over. But I need the heart to work properly. But once I get talking about sports I literally cannot help it. I just get going.
It's like a wrestling promo when I'm watching you on the channel.
Oh, man. All right. Well, Daniel, anything else before we can go? Because we're like almost 20 minutes over.
Just the last thing I had.
You're fine.
It was an important thing I want to ask. You've been very vocal about the school. Like you show your support to the for the team. Of course, you played there. I've seen quotes that you put out about the team. What do you think has been the issue with the culture there since they haven't been having that much success over the past 5 or 6 years? Because Nebraska, they were a college football powerhouse, and of course the 80s and 90s, and they had some good years when you were there. What do you think has been the issue with the team?
You want the condensed version, or you want the full answer?
Whatever you want.
Okay, so when Osborne left, I mean, first of all, when you have one of the 2 or 3 greatest coaches of all time, that's a hard guy to replace. Okay. Frank Solich, I will argue to this day, was fired too soon. He was fired after a 10-3 season. Okay. Was he Osborne at that point? No. Who could have been at that point? He was never given the opportunity to get there. And frankly, Osborne wasn't Osborne. Okay. He took over in 72 and won his first title in 94. It took him 22 years to get to that point. And then he just won 3 and 4 and retired. So in fairness, Osborne wasn't Osborne as we know him in the beginning. It took him a while to get there. In fact, they tried to fire him in 1978 because he lost his first 6 games to Barry Switzer in Oklahoma. Okay. The difference was Osborne didn't get fired in 78. Solich got fired in 02. He didn't get that chance. But to that point, Solich hadn't had quite the same we're in the national title conversation success every year. Then the idea got thrown around. You can't win with what we've won with here for 45 years, which is running the football and running the option. I mean, we haven't won less than 9 games since 1959, but it no longer works anymore. So that was a big mistake. And so we brought in a guy, Bill Callahan. He changed the entire offense, which is fine. He's had success with that offense. I would argue that offense is predicated, the West Coast, the passing offense, around elite level skill position guys. Well, you're going to compete trying to get those guys with USC, Florida, like beaches. It's hard to consistently win that recruiting battle, although we have recruited well. Give Frost credit with that, which is why we had success doing what we were doing, going with linemen, the running game, option quarterbacks, which not every school is going after. So anyways, that didn't go great. And in all honesty, Callahan actually did pretty good with the offense. You could argue the defense, especially from 07 on, really just kind of struggled. And so then they bring in Bo Pelini, who does really well. And he's a defensive-minded guy because the defense had struggled, then the offense struggled. But Pelini never won less than 9 games. They were ranked in the top 10 at times, played for Big 12 titles, played in, won big bowl games, played highly ranked teams, did well. Well, there's 2 things that led to him being gone. They actually did not perform well. I take that back on the big stage consistently. They got blown out a lot. Okay. Wisconsin set the single game rushing record, over 400 yards in a rushing game in the middle of a snow blizzard. They did it in 3 quarters. That was hard to watch. So they consistently did not perform well under the bright lights with the nation watching. The other thing was I played for Pelini. He's a really good coach. Players love him. I loved him when he was our D coordinator. Okay. He's also a passionate guy, a very proud guy, and he doesn't give a crap about playing politics. And so there was some fractured relationships between him and some of the brass, shall we say. And it got to the point where feelings were hurt and egos got involved beyond repair. And that's kind of what I was talking about when he got fired. I'm like, Pelini's a good football coach. He's going to go somewhere else and he's going to have success. But right now, the egos, the emotions, the feelings are hurt. Whether I like it or not, he probably has to go. Plus, he's not had good success on the big stage. And so that's where my opinion disagreed with what everyone else was saying. And then they bring in, was it Mike Riley? And, you know, Riley's a great guy, but he's a 500 coach. His record at Nebraska is exactly 500. His career record is 500. And Nebraska's looking for more than that. It's a great human being, but it didn't work out. You get to Scott Frost. With Scott Frost, he understands how to win at Nebraska, or at least we thought he did. He's won here as a player. He's had success as an offensive coordinator, coached a Heisman Trophy winner, did what he did at UCF. You know, interestingly enough, he's been a head coach for 6 years now. He actually only has one winning season out of those 6 years. It's the year they went undefeated. So maybe the expectations were a little too high. I would fall into that realm as well when he got here. The feeling I get is threefold. Number one, he's done a phenomenal job recruiting. We are the most talented team in the Big Ten West every year. There's no question about it. Yet we're at the bottom. Well, that comes back to player development, and that comes back to coaching. And I do think Frost came in with a bit of a puffy chest, okay, a bit of an ego. You want to come in confident. You want to come in believing your way is the best, or why are you doing it? But I felt like there was a little bit of a stubbornness, maybe a lack of accountability. Like he would talk about, these aren't my players. Our players must like, these players must like to lose. Like, if I'm a player, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I don't want to. You know, I think that stuff helped. I also think he came in, he even said, you know, the Big Ten hopefully has to adjust to us. I love that statement. I still love it to this day, even though it didn't age well, because that's the attitude you should have. But I think there was a lack of, I'm going to learn quicker. I'm going to adjust quicker if I have to. It was kind of, this is how we're going to do it, and it's going to work no matter what. And you could see, even with the guys he's recruiting a receiver, instead of the, 5'11" track guys that he recruited at Oregon, now he's recruiting 6'3", 6'4", Big Ten, big type guys. So to me, there's a little bit of, it took him a while to hopefully figure it out. I don't know that he still has. Hopefully he has. I think there's a little bit of, he's not great in front of the microphone. I feel like he's done a lot of damage to himself in front of the mic at press conferences. He did a little bit better last year. Like, he came up, that first press conference last year, he was, like, he didn't hide it. He was straight up disrespectful to people in the media. He had venom. Why does Scott, you can Google, you can look it up on YouTube. Why does Scott Frost seem so mad after the first press conference, or however I phrased it? Then they go out and they basically get their butts whooped by Illinois, which is bad. And then he's great in front of the mic the rest of the year. It's almost like he thought they were going to come out and be good. Then they weren't, so he had to be humble. I don't know. I'm hoping he figures it out. I'm hoping he humbles himself a little bit, yet keeps that confidence. It's one of those things where you got to get everyone on board. And I can't help but wonder, and nobody else ever brings this up. I bring it up. I get kind of funny looks sometimes, but I've had Frost. I've seen the look in his eye when certain things are brought up from 26 years ago, 25 years ago. When he was a player, he was booed bad. Okay. And in 96, they blamed him for Nebraska not winning the national title. Like, they flat out blamed him. And he didn't play well most of the season, but it's a little rough to put on a first-year starter. In 97, he got booed early, and then he took off the rest of the year and he played really well. But he remembers the media and what they wrote. He remembers the fans booing him. And that is something that has stuck with him for 25, 26 years, even though he doesn't bring it up a lot publicly, although he'll bring up his playing days a lot. I've seen when it's been brought up, and I've seen the look in his eye. Like, it's almost like something that he hasn't been able to let go. And if he could just let go and not worry about every little thing, because I think it's made him sensitive to certain things, which he's a human. It's going to happen. There's certain things I'm sensitive to. But if you're going to be the head coach, when I asked Osborne, what's the biggest piece of advice you'd ever give a head coach? He said thick skin. That was his first response. Remember, they tried to fire him multiple times. In 91, after they lost to Georgia Tech and got embarrassed in the Citrus Bowl, he gathered his coaching staff, said, boys, start looking for jobs. They're going to fire me. That was his biggest piece of advice. And I feel like if Frost could get a little bit thicker skin, and it's tough. It's easy to say sitting in my rocker. It's a lot harder to do being the head guy of basically the biggest program in a state. But if he could do that, I think that would help him a lot, and that would reverberate through the program a lot. I tried to keep it short.
I know it's a topic that you could talk about.
Oh man, there ain't nothing wrong with that. I definitely, like I said, I like the change of pace, especially hearing about some college football. College has been fun. It's opening up a whole lot more things. We're gonna start seeing these guys being paid for their likenesses and things like that. We'll stop seeing some of that nonsense that that we've seen 10, 15 years ago, what they did to some of these guys. Like could you imagine if they had this plan in place 10, 15 years ago, what guys like Reggie Bush would would be remembered, instead of things that you've taken away from him for things that anyone who's involved with college athletics knows. Things like what we've done with Reggie Bush has been going on for decades. It's not anything new. It wasn't something shocking like that was done. We all know this stuff happens behind closed doors when we're talking about college athletics. It happens. My thing is, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so you mean when I used to play the EA Sports NCAA college football game, when I'd go play with Nebraska and I saw a 6'6" guy, 290 pounds, number 90 from Kennewick, Washington, you mean I wasn't supposed to pretend that wasn't me? I might have actually gotten paid for that?
And coincidentally, they're bringing the game back next year.
See, that's what I've been thinking. I thought that would be a lot more fun, is starting to see the college games reflect the actual players, not just as Adam was sitting there saying, Nebraska number 90, it just has a number 90. It doesn't say Adam Carriker, it doesn't say John Smith, it doesn't say nothing.
Yep. And
it was a lot of reasons why a lot of fans tuned away from the games. It was fun. Mm-hmm. You could play with your college team, whatever. But I think it opens up a lot more things, not just for football, but I still think when we're talking about college athletics, I still think college basketball will always be number one, as much as I think football overall rules. But I think the way the college basketball game works, it's a lot bigger for whatever reason. I just think it's March Madness is unparalleled.
Well, March Madness is a very unique thing. And they got over 300 college basketball teams. I don't know how else you'd even find a national champion. But it creates.
Could you imagine NCAA football trying to figure that out? You have 300 teams that have qualified for the tournament. Those guys would probably look at each other like, what?
Yeah, that'd be insane. No, it's definitely March Madness is definitely a very unique thing. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's one of the unique things, I think, moving forward, looking forward to college athletes being able to see their likeness, paid for it, being able to play themselves with their buddies on in the games and things of that nature. Things that probably, some of you guys wish you were able to do. It wasn't as fun because it wasn't really you.
So that was my favorite video game, was the college football game. So my son, he's going to be pumped that it's coming back. And I mean, one of the things that I liked running the option. You can do that kind of in Madden, but not obviously to the same degree, especially like back in the day with the old Nebraska thing. But one thing I used to do, I was like, all right, this is clearly me. So I'm going to make this look like me. So all of a sudden my biceps would be a lot bigger, and my waist would be thinner, my legs would be huge. I'm like, yeah, that's me. Now I'm happy.
I think that should be something. I think EA Sports, whoever it is, make sure you get with these guys. Make sure they look properly. The game looks right. No glitches, no problems. Because I guarantee you, they get it right. That it's something that's gonna come back with a vengeance more than you know. I think it's gonna be fun. We'll see what happens. Adam, how we typically end these things. We kind of throw the proverbial microphone over you. Anyone like to thank? Shoot out the social sites. Any charities you're working with outside of that, or anything you want to let the fam know. The time is yours, my friend.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you guys for having me. Thank you. You can always check me out on Facebook. Check me out on Twitter at Adam Carriker 94. I think Facebook is at Real Adam Carriker. I have an Instagram. Don't waste your time. I ain't posted in about 8 years. Carricker Chronicles is on YouTube. I do want to say with the heart thing, like, I appreciate everyone reaching out. I've received messages, texts, DMs from people I ain't talked to in like 10 or 15 years in some cases even more. There's one person I hadn't talked to since middle school that hit me up. So I appreciate the love and support. I'll keep you all updated on how everything's going forward. But that was pretty cool to see the outpouring of support. So I really appreciate that.
You definitely got support from us over here at A2D. Continue to get better. Hopefully, these follow-up appointments are just precautionary, and you'll be out of the woods. But appreciate the time as always, Adam. You should be getting that care package in a few days. For any of the fans, Adam's going to be sending back some autograph memorabilia. We got a Nebraska jersey that he's going to be signing. We're going to be giving away, and I got a couple rookie cards I sent him. So we're going to be hooking the fans back up with some memorabilia. Adam, as always, it's an absolute pleasure having you on here.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate the time, and we'll definitely looking forward to having you back on here again in the future, my friend.
Appreciate it, fellas. Thank you.
All right, everyone. That was Adam Carriker. Another awesome interview with him. Again, the Athlete Spotlight. We enjoy being able to get these interviews out here for you guys. Adam is one of the guys that we love talking to. So much insight, so many different levels to talk to. We're only supposed to be on here for 30 minutes. He's on here well over an hour, and we had to get him off. It's already been an hour.
Yeah.
So it's one of these things, man. We'll definitely get Adam back on here again, guys. Again, make sure you like, subscribe. You make sure you're supporting all that we're doing. Make sure you head over to YouTube and click that join button so you can become one of our premium members. We're gonna, like I said, I got a few things that we're working with giveaways. I got a dual sign mini helmet I'm gonna be giving away shortly. We're about to hit 2 million views on YouTube. We're closing in on 8,000 subscriptions on YouTube. About to hit, I think it's 80K just organic likes on Facebook. Guys, please make sure you are following us on all the platforms. We're gonna be doing a lot more fun stuff over the next few months. Make sure you stay tuned in. A lot more programming going on today. I know, it's Fan Friday. The boys will be on. Jake and everyone will be on. We'll be on tomorrow night. Going to have some fun. Ben Troop will be joining us. So make sure you're back on 8 to 10 tomorrow night. Me and Daniel will be on. Other than that, this was another fun one in the books. I'm Steve. That's Daniel. This was the Athlete Spotlight. We